What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. A little bit of a different look here today as I'm currently on the road, but of course, not going to miss talking about Manchester City and Arsenal. It ends 2-2. John Stones with the last second equalizer, basically at the death, to secure a point for City and rip a win away from Arsenal. So many talking points in this game. And I do also want to get to and spend most of my time on actually what this means moving forward. But I want to start with some of the things we saw in this game and highlight a couple incidents in particular. The Kai Havertz contact with Rodri, however you want to describe it, right off the kickoff. Kyle Walker poking consistently Gabriel on the set piece that resulted in Arsenal's second goal. And then, of course, the red card to Leandro Trossard. The overarching theme I want to point out here is that the petulance didn't end well for anybody. City were clearly furious with Havertz. That should have been a yellow card. It was not a red. Michael Oliver missed it. There's nothing you can do, unfortunately. But that clearly irritated City, and all of a sudden they actually started the game really well and scored a few minutes after that. And I why Kyle Walker was defending Gabriel, I don't know when you have three center backs on the field. Why Kyle Walker thought it was a good idea to then antagonize Gabriel by poking him, I also don't know. It was very funny because I had noticed he was doing it, so I watched that unfold, and he's just poking him, and then Gabriel runs right by him, and as soon as Gabriel, you saw where Saka placed the ball, and you saw Gabriel running, and you went, oh, this is a goal. It was, so that didn't end well. And then, of course, Trossard gets himself sent off. Now, on the Trossard red card, let's be very clear that finally the story that got relayed consistently was that it was for a second yellow. The second yellow was for delaying the game by kicking the ball. Similar situation to Declan Rice a few weeks ago. And I'm pretty much going to say the same thing I said then. It is a bad look when you can go back in the same half and point to a situation in which a different player on the opposing team does something similar, and in this case essentially does the exact same thing, and does not receive a yellow card, and then you go hand a yellow card out to a second yellow out to a player. I'm right there. The inconsistency is infuriating. You can go back and listen to the video after the Declan Rice second yellow against Brighton. I made the point about the inconsistency in the officiating and that either this has to be a yellow card or it's not. And the explanation that came down after the Declan Rice one was that it was for delaying a restart. It wasn't about necessarily kicking the ball away, which is the difference between that and the João Pedro situation in that game. But Jeremy Doku delayed the restart, didn't get a yellow. I will acknowledge that up front. It's infuriating. It incentivizes you as a player to test the limits. At the same time, because two things can and often are true, you can't kick the ball away in that situation on a yellow card after you just made that foul. You can't do it. You are inviting a referee to make that decision. Referees aren't going to be perfect. You just can't. You have to be smarter. You have to be more emotionally intelligent than clearly being frustrated with the call and then kicking the ball away, whether it was kind of a dissent sort of thing or intentionally trying to delay the restart, combination of both probably. You just can't do it. So and especially you can't do it when you just saw a referee a matter of weeks ago give your teammate a second yellow for doing something that was, I would argue, even less egregious. Trossard has to be smarter. yes, it's frustrating if you're an Arsenal fan that this has happened twice in games where you can also point to other situations in this very specific category of second yellows for time wasting and yellow cards for time wasting. And it happens to the same club twice. I get it. That's part of it here. Also, you just can't put yourself in that position when you're on a yellow card already. It's really all I have to say about that. Arsenal defend really, really, really well in the second half. Grew into the game in the first half, were the better team the last 25 minutes or so of that first half. They don't actually get, I mean, they were under pressure, obviously, the entire second half, but they didn't actually get put into that much danger where you felt like City were going to score. They really kept it compact and kept City long distance shots, forced them to try and create something. They never were able to break down the low compact block with that 5-4 that Arsenal set up in. And eventually they break through because they're Manchester City. It looked like Arsenal had done it. I really thought about a minute before that. They had gotten there. I think it was 96 on the clock, and David Raya had the ball. So you know nothing's going to happen until at least 97, basically, where you're really in danger. And sure enough, right after that, draw the corner, get the goal. It was a weird game in that sense because you don't even know what to take away from it because Arsenal were kind of forced into playing that way because of the red card. That is the talking point. That's what changed the game. And of course, it's exceptionally frustrating when you have 3 points in an unexpected manner like that, coming from behind, and having also earned that lead. There was nothing fluky about it. They were the better team over the first 45 minutes. And holding on for dear life for 50 plus minutes in the second half plus stoppage time to give up the goal at the end, of course, it's heartbreaking. But I don't want to lose sight of the bigger picture here. And this is really where I want to focus things. After that draw against Brighton, there were people saying, title race over, Arsenal can't afford to drop those points. With City actually starting the season well and looking like they're going to inevitably win every single week, it's done. I don't know how many people it was, but those people exist. Then you go into a North London derby without Martin Odegaard, without Declan Rice. And I said they had to go out and they had to win that game to stay in the title race. Because this game was next. And they did. The other thing I said, I talked about this last season. This is how I set the stage for this season and when talking about these two teams. The formula for Arsenal to go from being right there with Manchester City to overtaking Manchester City is twofold. One, they need to win the head-to-head series again like they did last season. And they need to be just a little bit better in the games against everybody else, because that's what decided the league, right? Those few times when they dropped points and Manchester City didn't. And Haaland goes and scores the first goal of this game. And you feel like if they lose this one, I mean, it's not over, but you've got a lot of work to do to try and catch Manchester City from behind when you have already dropped points twice. You've already played them once, and they're already 5 points ahead of you. 3 specific moments where it felt like this might have really slipped away from Arsenal. And they responded every single time. To the point now where, of course, the context of the game matters and the way that it played out, it's a crushing draw. But you going into that game, if you're Mikel Arteta, you take that every single day. It was not a bad result at all. It was a bad result for Manchester City and a good one for Arsenal, and here's why. Of course, when you had the opportunity to win that game, you're going to look at it as 2 points lost. But now, as Arsenal, if you avoid losing at home, You will not lose the head-to-head series. If you win at home, you win the head-to-head series. And the other part of this title race is now back in their control. If they win every single, now, are they going to? No. But if they win every single game they play from here on out, they will win the league. We can talk about how it's inevitable that City is going to win and that they needed to win this game, whatever, right? We're all very pessimistic when it comes to teams' chances of beating Manchester City, and rightfully so, because we see this play out. Arsenal have tried this before and they haven't gotten over the hump yet. But I refuse to go that far until we are there. Arsenal are right here in this title race again. They got through the toughest game on their schedule. If they win that home game, let's just say they play that game next week. And they win, they are on top of the Premier League. They did what they needed to do in this game to give themselves an opportunity to win those head-to-head games, win the head-to-head series. And that is so crucial because think about how different this feels. We don't put enough emphasis when the margins are this thin on the head-to-head meetings. I pointed out it's why they were right there last season. Right? When Haaland scores, you feel like the title race might be over. I would argue that's a little bit too far, but it's a valid opinion to hold. I can see why you would think that. It's not unreasonable. In that same game, there was a point, an extended period of time that lasted almost an hour, in which Arsenal were winning the league. And now we come out of it basically where we started, where these teams are neck and neck. Okay, City have a slight edge, but also Arsenal got through this game. They didn't lose any points in terms of the race with City. And they ultimately came out, if you can have a winner and a draw, even one as deflating as that one, they came out the winners. I know City lost Rodri, didn't have De Bruyne, Arsenal didn't have Odegaard. So you didn't see the best version of either of these teams. But don't lose sight of that part of this. In a literal sense, this is still Arsenal's to lose. Now, of course, it's Manchester City's to lose as well. They need to go Arsenal need to go win that second game that they play. Or at least get a draw and find ways to make up points another way. And if they don't do their job in the rest of the games, that game only matters so much. But this was the big question for me heading into this season. Was, can Arsenal repeat this? Because if they don't win the head-to-head against City, there is very little evidence to suggest they're going to make up those points against everybody else, because City have been better against everybody else. This is the way you overcome that, is by doing your job in these two games. So far, so good for Arsenal. They're right there in this title race. Second thing I want to mention real quickly, boy did AC Milan need that win in the Derby della Madonnina. Pulisic, really, really good individual goal to start the scoring. DeMarco gets one back for Inter. Set piece goal, very, very late on to win it for AC Milan. They avoid a 7th consecutive defeat to Inter. That would have been a record. They also win for just the second time this season across all competitions. And oh, by the way, are now tied on points with Inter in Serie A. That is how much, how much head-to-head matters, how much of this game swung the outlook of everything. It very well may have rescued their season with the tension, the frustration coming in, getting this kind of win against that team when you need it this badly. It was massive. Of course, they got to build on this. It can't just be one game, but you feel much, much, much better if you're on the red side of Milan. After this one, it is a 2-1 win for AC Milan over Inter. That is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.